I can do anything. I can reach any goal today. I can do what I want. I can be what I want to be.
Hi guys, Katie Azevedo from SchoolHabits.com. This video is about study tips for auditory learners. I have other videos about study tips for kinesthetic learners and for visual learners, so if that's you, go check out the other videos. So you may have heard a million times that we all learn differently. Yeah, sounds really general. But did you know that that's actually really very true? We really do all process and learn information differently. These are called learning styles, and there are 3 or 4 main ones. As I just went through this: auditory, visual, and kinesthetic. Now, I said there might be a 4th because some people argue that there's a 4th style, the read-write learners. I totally believe in the 4th style, because I am one. So sometimes we fall perfectly into one category, but sometimes we sort of straddle 2 categories, so we're a combination of learner types. What matters is that we take the time to figure out what type of learner we are, and then we use study techniques that work for that learning style. What matters is that we take the time to figure out what type of learner we are, and then we use study techniques that work for that learning style. Makes so much sense, doesn't it? So going through the small effort of identifying our learning style can literally change everything about how we do school. Once you do this, you can stop using all the other study methods, note-taking methods, and reading strategies that don't work for you and that don't work for your style, even though they might be great for someone else. Mind-blowing, right? Now today's video is for auditory learners. I'm going to give you some study hacks that make sense for how your brain works. Now, if you know you're an auditory learner, stay tuned. But if you don't yet know your learning style, I'm going to go over some characteristics of auditory learners in a second, and you might identify with some of the traits that I go over. So you should keep watching as well. Quick note here. Now, when I talk about learning styles, I'm not talking about learning disabilities. I am a special education teacher, okay? So I could do a million different videos about learning disabilities and study tips that work for students with those learning differences. But with that said, keep in mind that there's also an overlap between good study tips for typical learners and good study tips for students with learning disabilities. So if you have a learning disability and are still an auditory learner, then what I go over in this video is definitely going to help you too. So auditory learners, those people who prefer to hear information rather than read it or something, have some key identifying characteristics that make them unique from visual learners or kinesthetic learners or from read-write learners. So auditory learners tend to be good listeners. They like and do well in lecture classes. Typically will benefit from oral explanations and directions versus having them written down. They benefit from active class discussions and definitely from participating in them too. So listening to them and then joining them. They usually are distracted by noise. They sometimes talk to themselves, okay? Or they're easily distracted sometimes by too many colors or graphics or things going on visually. And then auditory learners are also typically able to see the big idea before the details make sense. Does that sound like you? Well, here we go, on to the tips. First one, study in small groups. Because auditory learners benefit from hearing the information and from talking about it, group study sessions can be so helpful. And of course, I always advise that you study by yourself first so that you get a clear picture of what you do and you don't know, and then you take your questions to the group. Groups of 3 to 4 students is a good size, but even just having one study partner that you review with can do so much for how much we actually get what we're studying. Number 2, teach someone else the material. This study tip works for any and all learning styles, all right? But it works like magic for auditory learners. Now, this is different from studying in a group. When you're studying in a group, the other people are generally familiar with the material, all right? But for this strategy, it's actually best to find someone who doesn't really know what you're talking about, like maybe a younger sibling, a friend who's not taking that class, or your mom. Seriously, my oldest daughter is in 1st grade, and some of the stuff she brings home got me all like, I don't know. It's a confession. I don't know 1st grade stuff. So number 3, watch videos about what you're learning in class. And like, you pick the videos, so they don't have to be like documentaries. They can be fun videos, right? You're on YouTube anyway. It doesn't take a rocket scientist also to figure out that I would be all about YouTube, right? But seriously, there is so much good information out there in video format that can help reinforce what we learn in class. Videos work well for a lot of different reasons. So first, you're an auditory learner. Your brain likes to hear information. And of course, the videos have audio along with them, right? So you're getting that audio input. Second, you get a chance to hear the information presented a little bit differently from how your teacher or your textbook explains it. Every time we learn material from a different perspective, or we get a different version of it, the better we understand it, and then the longer we remember it. All right, so like, let's say you're taking an anatomy course. Watch videos about that. You're reading the Odyssey. Watch an animated video of chapter summaries after each chapter you read. So I actually Googled this. Yeah, I did. 300 hours of video are uploaded to YouTube every single minute. Holy crap. That means there's obviously a lot of video about whatever it is that you happen to be learning. 300 a minute, that's nuts. Anyway, number 4, talk to yourself. Speaking of nuts, right? Yeah, I know. It sounds not cool to talk to yourself, but who cares? When you're reading, speak the words out loud under your breath. If you're reading alone, belt it out. That's cool too. You need to hear the information to get it. So speak loudly enough to hear your own voice. Don't just move your lips. Also, if you're studying from your notes, review them audibly. If you're reading from a book or a textbook, pause for a second after every chapter or every section, whatever you're reading, and verbally come up with a summary. Say this out loud. Also, then I would advise you to write those summaries down as part of a good annotation strategy. Anyways, if you're writing a paper, verbalize the words as you type them, right? Everything from your head out through your mouth. You get the idea. Number 5, stick to lecture classes if possible. I mean, how much control you have over your schedule varies depending on where you are in school. So like, if you're in middle school or high school, you sort of get what you get. But if you're college and beyond, you have some wiggle room. So if you can, and if you know you're an auditory learner, shoot for classes that are in lecture format. Or like at the very least, you could sort of ask around to find out what teachers are into lecturing and request those teachers. If you're an auditory learner, you're again gonna have a much easier time understanding what is spoken to you. So you wanna seek out environments that present information verbally, which is just how your brain likes it. You don't wanna have your brain work any harder than it already is. If you're an auditory learner, these tips should help you out. If they do, leave your comments below. If you have questions, leave those below too. I really try to get to everyone, and I definitely read all your comments. And like this, right, if you like this video, and subscribe if you love it, and if you haven't already. It really helps support my channel. As always, thank you so much for watching. Bye guys!